The smirk appeared first on the junior agent's face, then it passed, like a secret joke, to the older one beside her. Neither looked up at Adana, they only glanced at each other, trying not to laugh. "Sorry," the older woman finally asked, pretending confusion. Adana repeated herself calmly. "I have a first-class ticket to Nairobi, I'd like to check in." Her voice was measured. She wasn't rushing, but the moment the second syllable of Nairobi touched the air, the young agent half-snorted. The senior one didn't miss a beat. "Class," she echoed. "Do you have ID and a credit card? We usually verify for these kinds of upgrades." Adana opened her bag and placed both items down with deliberate care. Neither of them moved to take them. From behind her, a man sighed. Audibly, the queue had grown. Still, the agent stayed still, watching her, waiting for more words, more accent. And then, without prompt, the younger agent leaned forward, lips curled. "I'm just trying to understand you," she said. "Sometimes the English is a little difficult." Adana didn't blink. Her hand remained still on the counter, her fingers lightly touching her passport. "I'm not the one struggling with understanding," she said quietly. The air shifted, just a little. Behind her, someone muttered, "That was unnecessary." The younger agent turned red but didn't apologize. She turned to the screen, typing with a bit too much force. Adana's eyes stayed on her, not angry, just aware. It wasn't her first time being looked through like glass, but this time, something about the weight of her silence made the room start to shrink, and for the first time in their careers, both agents seemed unsure of who exactly was being evaluated. Jaw tightened slightly, but she didn't move. Her hands remained resting on the counter, fingers gently curled inward. "I said," she repeated, "first class to Nairobi. My confirmation number is in the email I showed you." The older agent raised an eyebrow and leaned toward her co-worker, pretending to whisper loud enough for the queue to hear. "We don't have time to translate." The words dropped like glass. There was a flicker. Someone in line gasped. A man further back shifted uncomfortably. Still no one spoke. Gaze didn't waver. "I'm speaking English," she said softly. The younger agent laughed, looking anywhere but at her. "No need to get sensitive," she murmured, flipping through the passport now like it was damp paper. Silence. Heavy. The other agent typed something lazily, then paused. "Maybe it's under a different name," she offered, eyes wide with forced innocence. Adana didn't flinch. "Check under Okoro, same name as the reservation. Same name as the travel company that booked 87 seats on your airline this month." The typing stopped. The laughter stopped. The younger one glanced over, confused now. "Wait, what company?" Adana leaned in, not aggressively, just enough. "Tell me," she said gently. "Do you mock all first-class passengers? Or only the ones whose accents remind you of places you were taught to forget?" No answer. Only the low hum of the terminal returned. The passengers behind her weren't laughing anymore. A woman clutched her purse tighter. A child stared without blinking. Still, no one stepped forward. That was the part that stung the most. Not the insult. She had worn thicker ones like a second skin. But the silence that followed. That awful, practiced silence of people who agreed. Just quietly. The pause hung like fog, too thick to push through. No one met her eyes. Not even the one who mocked her. Adana didn't blink. She calculated her thumb adjusted on the handle of her briefcase, barely a movement, but precise. The same hand that once held slides no one paid attention to. The same fingers that stirred sugar into tea while men explained her own work back to her. "I'm not here to argue," she said, steady. "I'm here to board." The older agent cleared her throat. "Well, miss, the system isn't showing. It's Dr. Okoro," Adana interrupted. She hadn't planned to say that, but it came quiet and crisp. "I didn't spend years earning titles just to leave them behind at your counter." The woman's lips parted, unsure how to recover. The younger one stepped forward. "Look, ma'am, we're just trying to verify. Understand? Verify away." Her calm wasn't fragile, it was trained. Years of being made to repeat herself in meetings, of being smiled at while ignored, years of being told she was too direct, then too quiet, then not quite the fit. But today was different, because today, she wasn't alone. Not really. 87 clients were booked through her firm, all watching, all following. The agent tapped a few keys, then frowned. Her shoulders pulled in slightly. "Looks like there is a booking. First class. Company listed as Afara Global," Adana said for her. Another pause, not hostile, just hollow. The sound of a boarding call echoed overhead. Adana didn't rush. "Would you like the name of the other executives flying with me today?" she asked. Neither woman responded. She didn't need them to. She had already made her point, without raising her voice. The keyboard clacked once more, then silence. The older agent leaned back slightly, her eyes scanning Adana as if trying to read something written on her skin instead of the screen. Behind her, a man's voice cut in dry, loud enough to carry. You people should learn proper English. It didn't come with a smirk. It came like a rule, the kind that wasn't questioned, just enforced. Adana turned her head slowly, not startled, not shaken, just tired. The man wore a TSA badge. He didn't even meet her eyes, just looked past her as if she weren't part of the room. Someone behind the counter stifled a laugh. Another snorted under their breath. The sound didn't echo, but it lingered. No one said anything, not even the other passengers, most of whom had heard it. Pretending they didn't, single quotes. Anna blinked once. Excuse me, she said, not as a question, just a mirror held up. The officer shrugged. It's not personal, just hard to understand, is all. If you people wanna fly first class, at least speak clearly. A beat past you people, she repeated, low. You mean black women? Foreign accents, those who don't sound like you. He lifted his chin. I said what I said. Her voice didn't rise, and I heard it clearly. Something in his jaw tightened. He hadn't expected her to stay still, to remain calm. His power lived in escalation, and she refused to play. Across the hall, a child looked up at her mother, whispered something. The mother frowned at the officer. Just like that, the air changed. Not much, but enough. Adana turned back to the agent. Are we finished here? The woman didn't respond, but her hands were trembling now, and Adana noted. Adana said, voice barely above a whisper. I will let the board know. The words didn't fall like anger. They sank quiet, clipped, definite. The agent blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. He chuckled dryly. The board. Adana didn't answer. He scoffed again. Some complaint form to HR. Look, you can do whatever you want. Doesn't change. I wasn't talking about this airport's board, she said, still calm. I meant mine. Now he paused. Her tone didn't waver, didn't clarify. Behind her, the same child from before tugged at their mother's sleeve. Mum, she's not mad. No, the mother said, watching Adana. She's not. The child frowned. He was mean. I know, baby. Adana adjusted the strap of her bag. Her face gave nothing away. No pride, no smugness, just stillness. Look, the agent muttered, suddenly uncertain. If you're threatening me, I said nothing. Threatening, she cut in, gently. You'll finish processing my ID. Now he hesitated. That flicker, the one that comes when power senses it's slipping. I'll call a supervisor. You should, she replied. He didn't move. She did, by standing straighter, saying nothing more. A hush fell around them. Not total silence, but that subtle shift when people start paying attention, really paying attention. The chuckles had stopped, the side comments vanished, and the agent, he suddenly looked very small behind that counter. He picked up the phone, voice now low. Yeah, supervisor to gate 6. Adana turned slightly. Her eyes met the mother's, a soft exchange. No smile, just recognition. The child looked up at her. You don't have to yell, they said quietly. No, Adana answered, barely moving her lips. I don't, and that was the loudest thing in the room. The supervisor hadn't even arrived yet when Adana turned and walked away. No dramatic exit, just calm steps. Her heels tapped like a quiet metronome against the polished floor, slow, measured, final. People watched, but no one spoke. She pulled her phone from her coat pocket. No rush, no flourish. Then, gently, as if speaking to herself, she said into the receiver, pull the contract. There was silence. We didn't hear the voice on the other end, but we didn't need to. Her face did all the talking now. Jaw clenched, eyes steady. The look of someone who's been shamed publicly, but never stripped of control. Behind her, the agent was now trying to look busy, fidgeting with papers that didn't need organizing. His laughter had dried up, so had his authority. He glanced around, sensing something shifting in the room. Not fast, not loud, just shifting. A TSA officer leaned closer and whispered, You good? The agent didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on Adana. She stood still near a window, the phone still to her ear. A pause. Then her lips barely moved again, immediately. That was it. She hung up. No anger in her movement, no show. Just quiet power. Across the terminal, someone finally whispered, Who is she? No one answered. But there was no more chuckling, no more side glances, no more just joking. Adana turned, headed toward her gate. No limp in her walk, No sign of shaken pride, just purpose. The agent swallowed hard. That sick feeling of recognition, the one that comes too late. And yet, she never looked back. Didn't need to. Some people speak with silence. Some speak with removal. She'd just spoken with both. Pick up, her mother whispered, tapping the edge of the rotary phone. Adana's small fingers spun the dial with slow precision, her eyes fixed on the wrinkled map pinned to the wooden wall. The booth was barely a shed-sheets of tin, an old chair, a borrowed fan, but it buzzed with the hum of waiting. Her mother's voice, firm but gentle. Try the London line again, Ada, the one we spoke to last week. Adana nodded, spun the dial. The phone clacked with every turn. Outside, heat shimmered off the street. A group of white tourists passed by. None looked their way. One of them laughed as he muttered, "Fake agency. Poor kid doesn't even speak properly." Adana didn't flinch. She just listened. Her mother turned her head slightly. "Don't mind them," she said, though her voice cracked around the edges. "I'm not," Adana replied. She was, but not the way they thought. Another turn of the dial, another rejection. "We don't book through Nigerians," came the reply before the line cut. Her mother didn't say anything this time. That night, when the call stopped, Adana sat in the back corner of the booth, replaying voices in her head. How they said her name wrong, how they laughed, how they left, but also, how her mother stood tall, even when ignored. Years would pass. The streets would change, but that booth would stay with her, so would the sound of that phone, clack, 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 like a countdown to something they couldn't see yet. She wasn't learning travel, she was learning people, and one day, they'd remember the girl behind the rotary phone, the one they didn't hear until it was too late. "Can you say that again, but simpler?" the professor asked, squinting like he was trying to read her mouth instead of her mind. Adana blinked, then nodded once. "I was saying, the platform wouldn't scale unless we redesign the back end." He smiled like he'd taught her something. "Exactly," he said. "That's better." But she hadn't changed a word. Later, during mock interviews, a recruiter paused mid-sentence. "Adana," he repeated slowly, "is that your first name?" "Yes." "And the last one, Ogu, how do you say that?" She told him. He winced. "Right. Strong name. Difficult for clients, maybe." She didn't flinch. Not this time. Because every time they smiled politely at her name, every time they glanced past her hand in group projects, every time they asked, "Where are you really from?" She wrote code. Alone. Quietly. Fiercely. She stayed up while others slept, sketched routes while others partied, built back-end tools no one else noticed until they needed them. One internship turned into two, then none when they heard her speak. But she didn't argue. She registered a domain instead, then another, then 20.3 years later. The same recruiter clicked confirm booking on a flight to Tokyo using a sleek interface built by a Nigerian woman whose name he'd never learned to pronounce. He didn't know he'd just paid her. She didn't need him to. Back then, they thought her accent was the problem. But the real issue was simpler. They assumed she was temporary. They assumed wrong. And now when they say this company changed travel, she smiles. Just enough, because they're still rephrasing her brilliance into their language, but this time, they're paying to do it. "Thank you both for coming," the German executive said, offering his hand to the intern. Adana stood half a step behind, observing. "This is Alex," she said calmly. "He's our data analyst." The man's handshake didn't move. "Ah, I assumed, ... my mistake." Alex gave a nervous smile. "She's the founder." Adana didn't flinch. Inside the glass boardroom, their voices bounced off cold walls. As Adana presented the network's expansion model, the executive leaned toward Alex after every sentence. "Can you just explain what she meant?" he asked. Alex glanced at her, then spoke slower, repeating her words nearly verbatim. She didn't interrupt. She didn't need to, because the numbers didn't need accents, and the platform didn't need approval. She finished her pitch and closed her laptop softly. "Well," the executive said, folding his hands, "we are impressed. Very forward-thinking." Adana nodded once. "We'll have legal send over the terms." He smiled tightly. "We'll wait to hear from your team." She smiled tighter. "You already have." That night, she rewrote the contract, changed the licensing fee, adjusted the data rights, added a clause they didn't notice, one that gave her control over all back-end analytics if the partnership reached phase 2. They didn't read it closely, too busy celebrating what they thought was a win. She had learned this before, in college, in silence. When they underestimate you, they leave gaps. She didn't correct their assumptions. She corrected the numbers so when Phase 2 launched and their servers rerouted through her cloud, she didn't answer their calls. Alex did. Miss Ogu is unavailable. Pause, she's recalibrating. Click, they never asked him to translate again. Your card's been declined. Adana blinked. That's not possible. The concierge smiled tightly, lowering her voice. We've also flagged it for possible fraud. Standard procedure. 2. Guards stood near the marble elevator, watching. Adana exhaled slowly. She reached for her phone. It's just a hold, the woman added, for your safety. Adana didn't answer. She tapped a name. Tariq, regional director. He picked up on the second ring. Adana, they froze my card again. Silence. Which location? He asked. Singapore lobby. Another pause. Stay there. The concierge leaned forward. If you'd like to wait over there. Adana raised a hand gently. No. The woman blinked. I said no. The silence that followed wasn't loud, but it tightened the room. 10 minutes passed. Tariq appeared, brisk and breathless. Miss Ogu, he said, loud enough for the lobby to hear. Apologies, that will never happen again. He turned to the concierge. She personally owns the travel group that just signed your largest annual booking. Pull up her file. The woman fumbled for her tablet. Tariq looked at her, then back. At Adana, should I cancel the full contract? Adana tilted her head. The concierge stammered. We didn't realize I did. Adana said quietly, and then she walked past them. Not angry, not flustered, just certain. Inside the elevator, her hand shook slightly before pressing the penthouse button. She'd memorized this pattern, the pause, the doubt, the apology. She'd stopped expecting better, but something about this one, the way they all looked at her after, it didn't sting. It settled, because they saw her now. Not just the card, not just the accent. Asterisk. Her, and she wasn't going to explain herself anymore. Step aside, ma'am. Random screening. Adana didn't flinch. She placed her bag on the table and raised her arms just like last time, and the time before. The officer waved the wand a little too close. Do you have any metal implants? No. He lingered at her wrist. Bracelet. She took it off without speaking. Behind her, a white couple breezed through without a glance. Another officer, younger, nervous, looked between her and the screen. Says here, premium access. Adana nodded. Yes, he hesitated. Like first class. Yes, she said again. The older officer smirked. Ma'am, do you even belong in this line? Adana met his eyes. Long enough for it to feel like a pause, but short enough not to give him what he wanted. Her voice was calm. Practiced. The wand beeped at her ankle. Her bracelet mistakenly dropped into her boot. He raised his brow. You're hiding something. Adana smiled gently. Just patience. That shut him up. The younger officer cleared his throat. She's cleared. Let her go. Then, as she laced her boot back up, she felt their eyes still on her. Not curious, just watching. 5 years, 50 cities, hundreds of gates. And still her name didn't move her forward. Not here. Not through this line. The smile she gave as she walked off wasn't warmth, it was survival. The man at the gate scanned her tickets. Oh, ma'am, your priority. She didn't answer. She just walked through the velvet rope and past the others waiting. The final glance she gave to the security lane said what she wouldn't waste words on. She didn't need them to see her anymore. She was already miles ahead. Sure, Dev's voice was low, almost like he regretted asking it. Adana didn't look up. She poured tea slowly. One cup, then the other. They mocked you, he said again, firmer now. They froze your card, made you prove your name. Searched you. She set the teapot down with a soft clink. Dev shifted forward. I pulled the contract, all of it. She finally met his eyes, confirmed. He nodded once, effective immediately. 950 million. Gone. There was no celebration in his tone, no satisfaction, just wait. Adana stirred her tea but didn't lift it. Her fingers trembled slightly before she stilled them. How long before they noticed? She asked. Already did. CEO called me 5 minutes ago. 3 missed calls, 2 emails, still deciding if I'll answer. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was heavy. Like thunder waiting behind clouds. Dev leaned back. You don't have to explain, you know. I wasn't going to. He nodded, then smiled faintly. Didn't think so. Adana finally picked up her cup. They thought I needed their validation. Dev's smile faded. Looked at my skin, my accent, my name, and decided I was optional. He didn't respond. She sipped her tea. Now they get to learn what optional really feels like. Dev let out a slow breath, almost a laugh, but it died in his throat. Want me to answer the CEO no statement? No, what then? Adana placed the cup back down, eyes fixed on the skyline through the glass. They mocked what they didn't understand. She stood, adjusted her sleeve, let them sit with that. Dev didn't speak again. He didn't need to. Her heels walking away said everything. She's the reason the contract disappeared overnight. No way. I heard it from Devon's assistant. Said she didn't raise her voice once. The break room wasn't loud anymore, just murmurs, the kind that sink under skin. She looked so normal. I thought she was like someone's plot. You mean you thought she couldn't be someone? The guy didn't respond. Across the room, someone closed their laptop slowly. I was in line when it happened, a younger agent whispered. They made her spell her name, out loud, twice. A pause. She did it, without blinking. Do you think she knew then? Another voice older, Warren spoke from the corner. She knew the moment they called her out. The way she stood there, that wasn't confusion. That was restraint. Nobody argued. Phones buzzed. One by one, screens lit up. A company-wide email, term review, travel accounts, internal audits, and a name at the center. Adana OKOYE. Someone finally said it aloud, careful, like it might crack the air. She's connected to the board. No, she is the board. Someone laughed nervously. It didn't last. The chuckles had dried up since morning. Now, every whisper came with a pause, like the walls might echo. She was right there, in front of us, and we mocked her. A silence settled, deep, humbling. Another voice broke it. She didn't yell, didn't threaten. Nope, someone whispered. She just left, and took $950 million with her. In that break room. They didn't pass around blame, they passed around fear, not because she was powerful, but because she had been kind, and still didn't hesitate to disappear. That kind of silence, it cuts deeper than noise ever could. She's not answering calls, someone said quietly. She won't. The room wasn't loud, but the silence between voices was heavier than the words themselves. Hands fidgeted, eyes darted to the head of the table, but no one sat there anymore. You think a press release will fix this? The man repeated, louder now. We let our agents humiliate her, spell her name, out loud twice. Someone sighed. She didn't even flinch. No, she watched. She let us bury ourselves. Another tapped her pen nervously. Maybe if we reroute the package. No. A third executive cut her off. It's not about logistics, it's about legacy. A pause. We humiliated someone who signs our checks. She didn't yell, didn't storm in, just vanished, and took the future with her. The door creaked. No one looked up. Her assistant called, said the decision is final. The room shifted, shoulders slumped. A few looked down like they were still trying to find the floor. How do you apologize to a woman who built her empire to survive people like us? Someone asked. No one answered, because they all knew the truth. You don't apologize to someone who's learned over decades that silence is stronger than begging, that restraint holds more power than rage, that the most dangerous, the kind of woman is the one who smiles while closing the door behind her. She knew, a younger board member murmured. She walked in knowing how this would end. A long breath. She gave us a chance, and we mocked her accent. No arguments now, just quiet. Just regret that had no room to breathe. No next move, no fix. Just the dull echo of everything they'd lost because they mistook grace for weakness. Ma, you seeing this? The teen whispered, eyes glued to her phone screen. Her mother was half asleep on the hotel couch. If it's another dance trend, it's not. Her voice broke slightly. It's her. That woman from the airport. The one they laughed at. She pressed play again. Grainy footage. Muffled audio. But the tension, clear as day. You can hear them laughing, she whispered, mocking her accent, saying she didn't sound premium. Her mother sat up slowly, and she just stood there. Didn't say a word, didn't move, just looked at them. The teen's voice softened. She didn't even blink, like she'd seen it all before. The caption read, she didn't yell, she just stared. And the whole place got quiet. Her mother exhaled. That's not just silence, that's years of knowing no one ever listens when you shout. They sat in stillness as the views climbed. 800K, 900K, 1.2 million. The sound in the video shifted, not in volume, but in weight. You could hear the discomfort, one agent trying to laugh it off, another clearing his throat. She held that whole room, the girl said quietly, with just a look. Her mother nodded. That's not just power, that's earned silence. The kind that comes after people have tried to erase you one too many times. The girl blinked, then turned her phone toward the camera for a second TikTok. She didn't curse, she didn't fight. She just made them hear themselves. She paused. Asterisk, and now we all hear it too. By morning, the airport's official account had gone dark, but the girl's clip, it kept looping. Over and over. Not rage, not revenge, just the echo of a stare no one could forget. You think she planned this? One anchor asked on a live broadcast. His co-host just shook her head. No, that's the point. She didn't have to. The clips played back to back, her stare, the agent's smirk fading, the silence thick enough to hold a mirror to a system. Adana never said a word on camera. She didn't need to. Across timelines and group chats, the question shifted from what happened to how long had it been happening. In a quiet cafe, two women scrolled through the headlines. One sipped her tea slowly. She's not trending because she fought, she said. She's trending because she didn't. Her friend nodded. That's what they can't handle. That the loudest voice in the room was her silence. In an office boardroom in Lagos, a senior executive stood by the window. The skyline was calm, but his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. They think this is about one flight, he muttered. His assistant cleared her throat. Sir, the UN just requested her to keynote next quarter's summit on dignity in global business travel. Pause. She hasn't responded. He smiled faintly. She won't, not yet, because Adana wasn't chasing cameras or applause. She was tending to her travelers, making sure every black mother, father, and child stepping into first class felt like they belonged. No hashtags, no interviews, just restored space. In homes, classrooms, even corporate workshops, people weren't debating if she had power. They were wondering how long she'd been made to dim it, and in that stillness, without a single raised voice, the world adjusted its volume. She had never shouted, but now the world did it for her, loud, clear, and with the kind of echo you can't scroll past. Is that her? Someone whispered near the back. Adana had already entered. No security, no handlers, just her soft grey suit, a scarf folded neatly around her neck. Calm, unbothered. She didn't glance around. She didn't need to. The room, glossy panels, tight faces, press badges, flashing, had already adjusted to her presence. Slowly, uncomfortably, the same agent from check-in stood frozen behind the podium. His eyes met hers for the first time since that morning. He blinked, then looked down. Adana walked to her seat. Not hurried, not dramatic, just steady, the way someone walks when the outcome is already written. Miss Adana, a panelist cleared his throat. We appreciate you being here today. She said nothing, just nodded once, not coldly, just completely in control. The moderator fumbled with his mic. We understand there's been some media attention. We hope today we can clarify a few misunderstandings. Adana's eyes didn't flicker, not once, but the silence that followed was unbearable. The kind that exposes more than any headline. The agent coughed. I didn't know who she was, he muttered, as if that changed anything. Adana turned slightly, not toward him, just in his direction. I was just doing my job, he added, voice cracking. Her gaze rested on him for 3 seconds. No anger, no revenge, just the quiet recognition that everyone in the room now saw what she had always known, the power she'd never needed to announce. The panel shifted in their seats. No one interrupted. No one asked questions, because in that silence the reckoning had already arrived, and it wasn't loud. It was her sitting still, with all the dignity they tried to strip, returned to her, piece by piece, by their own discomfort. ChatGPT said. The mic sat untouched in front of her. Adana leaned in just slightly. They didn't know who I was, she said, her voice steady. They assumed who I couldn't be. A few heads lowered. One camera clicked, then silence. The moderator shifted. Miss Adana, would you like to elaborate? She glanced at him, then back at the table. I don't need to. Her words hung there quiet, undeniable. The CEO of the airline cleared his throat. This was a miscommunication. Adana didn't look at him. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was a decision. The agent, sitting 2 seats down, visibly stiffened. His hands rested awkwardly in his lap. She turned her eyes on him once. They failed me, she said, voice soft. Not because they didn't know me, but because they were sure I didn't matter. The agent's fingers twitched. I didn't need a name on a badge to be treated like a person, she added, still calm. But apparently, dignity is reserved for the recognizable. The room felt heavier, not loud, just dense with unspoken truth. The agent tried, but no words followed. The CEO swallowed, then muttered, we deeply regret. No, she interrupted, still soft. You regret what it cost, not what it meant another silence, the kind that feels like exposure. Adana leaned back. She hadn't listed her accomplishments. She hadn't defended herself. She didn't have to. The room had already seen the truth, and what it looked like when dignity spoke with no need for volume. She folded her hands, and for the first time, it wasn't her silence that felt uncomfortable. It was theirs. A cough broke the silence. The executive's trim suit, voice cracking, leaned forward slightly. We sincerely apologize, Ms. Adana." She didn't flinch, just raised her hand gently, palm outward. "No," she said, calm, controlled. "You don't apologize to dignity, you return it." The man blinked. His lips parted like he might argue, but he didn't. She let the pause breathe, then spoke again. "That apology isn't for me. It's for the mirror you now fear." A few seats shifted. No one looked. Directly at her, behind her, a quiet stir. 3 women, black-brown, immigrants, stood from the side rows. No sign, no cue, just presence. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. One of them nodded at Adana, the others stood still, eyes steady on the panel. Adana didn't turn. She felt them, that was enough. The executive cleared his throat. "We're open to reviewing our protocols. Training you already trained them," she replied, voice barely above a whisper. They followed it. Another silence, this one longer. One of the panelists, a woman, set down her pen slowly. "This doesn't feel like a review," she said quietly. "It feels like a reckoning." Adana met her gaze. "It's neither. It's unveiling." Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through the air. "They assumed silence meant consent," Adana added. "Now they're learning it meant grace." The women behind her didn't move. They didn't blink. No applause, no dramatics, just wait. "I didn't come here for closure," Adana said. "I came to return what was stolen, not just from me." The panel looked smaller now, less sure of themselves, less insulated. Adana stepped back from the mic, and still not one woman behind her sat down. ChatGPT said. The heels on the marble floor were soft, not rushed, not proud, just certain. She walked out the same way she had entered, alone, unnoticed. Don't handshake, no escort, no attempt to fix what had already revealed itself. A few staffers stood by the glass doors, phones clutched in their hands but lowered. No one took a picture, no one asked a question. They just watched behind her. The room stayed still, a strange quietness, like air after ATHUNDERCLAP. Screens inside the boardroom flickered. A headline blinked to life. Travel conglomerate faces $950 million fallout over airport incident. Another flashed, CEO silent amid diversity scandal. The men in suits suddenly had nothing to say. Outside, the street noise carried on like it didn't know a corporate empire was cracking behind those glass walls. A reporter stood across the pavement, mid-call. No, she didn't speak to media, just walked out, didn't even look back. Adana's expression never shifted. Not proud, not angry, just done. Beside her, one of the women from before fell into step. "That was something," she said quietly. Adana didn't reply, because some exits don't need captions or applause. They write themselves into the spaces people don't want to look at. The building doors closed behind them. Another woman joined. Then another. No cheers, no banners, just movement. Across the news crawl, stocks tumbled, brand partners issued statements. A CEO deleted his social media, but Adana didn't flinch. She didn't need to see the damage. She was the message. A man held the door to her car open. She nodded once. As she got in, her phone buzzed. 15 missed calls. She turned it over, face dashed down. And for the first time all day exhaled. "Boarding group C," she said, barely above a whisper. The couple didn't respond, just scanned their passes and moved on. Chinni still wore the navy blazer. The scarf was tighter now, almost choking. Her badge caught the overhead lights, but no one looked down to read it. She stood straighter than before, not out of pride but habit. The posture she was trained to keep, even when cracked inside. The terminal was quieter out here. No luxury flyers, no noise, just red-eye passengers, too tired to notice the woman who once thought she could rise through this system. A child dropped a snack near her feet. The mother gave a small, tired smile, didn't pick it up. CHINWE didn't flinch. She stared at the digital screen like it mattered. Her phone buzzed in her blazer pocket. Once, then again. She checked it out of reflex. A message. Weeks old. Subject, Timizo Koro. "I'm sorry it hadn't been opened." Not really. Just glanced at once. She hovered over the thread, tapped it, then closed it again. Archived. She pressed her thumb to the side of the device. Screen dark, just like her inbox. "Ma'am, can I go ahead?" a passenger asked softly. She nodded. The man paused, then looked at her. Really looked. You used to work the main desk, right? She met his gaze. Yes. His lips parted as if to say something, then closed. He scanned his pass and walked on. She didn't watch him leave. Behind her, the overhead speaker echoed a final boarding call. She didn't move, didn't blink. Because sometimes justice doesn't knock twice, and guilt it never walks back through. The same gate it came in. The agent stared at the screen, her fingers still resting on the keyboard. The search bar blinked back at her. Adana Okoro. A moment passed before she hit enter. The results came fast: articles, news clippings, conference, headlines. Her face was everywhere. Not angry, not loud, just still, confident, untouchable. She scrolled down, clicked on one video, muted. Adana stood on stage, smiling gently, hands folded in front of her as a sea of people rose to their feet. The caption underneath read, "Built from silence, listened to by the world." A quiet exhale left the agent's lips. "Hey," someone whispered behind her. She flinched and minimized the tab. "Yeah, it was Mark, the new hire. You okay?" "Yeah, just checking something." He leaned closer. "Wasn't she the woman I didn't do anything to her. He studied her, right?" Silence. The agent clicked aimlessly, reopened the browser, then closed it again. "You know what they call her now," Mark said. "The travel queen. I heard she started her own airline, took half our client list in 1 month." She didn't respond. Mark lingered a second longer. "She still wears the same scarf in interviews." "I know," he nodded, and stepped away. The agent sat there, staring at her own reflection in the black screen. It didn't look like power. It looked like loss. She reopened the tab. One photo caught her. Adana, arms crossed in front of a jet, calm, unapologetic. She read the quote beneath it again. "Built from silence, listened to by the world." A line she'd never forget, because the loudest thing Adana ever said was nothing at all. The Lagos air was warm, thick with memory. Adana stepped into the booth, smaller than she remembered. The same chipped corners, same soft creak of the floorboard beneath her heel. But it wasn't just a phone booth anymore. There were desks now, worn chairs. "Do you want help finding your gate?" a young employee asked politely. Adana looked up from her boarding pass, smiled softly, and shook her head. "I know the way." The girl nodded and moved on. Adana stood still, right where the old confrontation had happened. Same terminal, same glass wall catching the morning sun. But something was different now. On a nearby pillar, barely noticeable unless you were looking, a small metal sign. Accent-friendly space. All voices welcome. No bold colors, no spotlight. Just quiet acknowledgement. A janitor wheeled past, paused. When he noticed her looking at the sign. "You seen that before?" he asked, wiping his brow. She turned to him, calm. "No, but I remember what it replaced." He glanced at her, puzzled, then back at the sign. "Didn't think people notice stuff like that." "They do," Adana said. "Just not always out loud." He gave a small nod. "Some of us, we notice what happened here." A beat of silence. The kind that says more than pity. "I work nights," he added. "Heard the manager resigned after all that noise." Adana didn't blink. It wasn't noise, it was clarity. He smiled faintly. "Well, whoever you are, thanks." She looked back at the sign one more time. Not for validation, just peace. People walked past her, rolling suitcases, chattering, boarding announcements echoing through the air. No one stopped her. No one questioned her accent. No one stared. And for the first time, that silence didn't feel cold. It felt earned. She adjusted the strap of her bag, turned toward her gate, and walked away, leaving nothing behind except the truth that had finally been heard, without needing to be repeated.